world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome back to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Maren and I'm here with Stephanie. And both of us are feeling, I would say, open-hearted and a little bit soft today. We both have been experiencing something that I think our listeners can really relate to, in that we've been questing after something which feels like it's been a longing in our lives, each of us different, and a longing in our lives for most of our lives. And we haven't quite gotten there yet. And yeah, you wanted to say something?
I was going to say, to those who are listening, is there anything in your life that you have known, like even when you were just a little child, that I really, really long for this? And it seems like everything else in your life has kind of lined up and clicked into place, but this one thing that you've been longing for.
It's elusive.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here.
And for everybody, it's different. For me and for Stephanie, it's very different in our lives and how it manifests. And there is that, like, I just can't get that one darn thing. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that today, and some of the key elements that Stephanie and I have been talking about, as far as the growth of that, and like finding ourselves in the frustration and in the anger and in the sadness and in the longing for
it's like,
that peace.
Is there something in your heart that you have longed for most of your life that just breaks your heart? Because you haven't been able to touch it? And I know I've said this before, is like whatever we're longing for is also longing for us. And sometimes I feel it's like we're on different universes. Whatever it is I'm longing for, and I know it must be longing for me. Okay, when are we going to meet up? Like, when can we actually make contact? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I don't know if any of you can relate to that. I'm sure many of you can. But there's something, whether it's, whether it's health or finances or love in your life, or, an ideal that you just, and we tend to always apply the high rational achiever. And what we've talked a lot about that in our podcast. Like, there are certain things that you're supposed to do, and there's certain mindsets you need to have, and there's all these do's. And what happens when you've done and done and done, and there still isn't any results? Or it feels that way.
It feels that way because there are results. They're just not what I expected them to be. It doesn't look like what I thought it would look like. And it feels like I'm still grasping after something, and it's just not quite there,
Yeah. So why don't we share what is in our hearts? We're going to be really transparent and really vulnerable on this one. So I'll share in what's on my heart is that, ever since I was a little girl, I've always wanted to have like a deeply loving relationship with someone. And, whether that was a best friend when I was a little child, or whether it was someone that I could have as a companion in my life, a male who I could be married to. Like, I always thought that was kind of the ideal. And, in my life, I've had lots and lots of friendships, wonderful friendships. And I've had lots of relationships, love relationships, but nothing has seemed to go deep or long lasting. And that's not always true, because the part of me can be very, very hard on myself and deny the very things that are also really great too. So I know some of my friends who are listening, I love you. And I know you're deeply into my life as well too.
Well, and I think that that's a great point,
Yeah.
because that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is it seems like it's missing. And yet, when you really examine it, there's a wonderful woman named Byron Katie who's got a body of work called The Work. And you ask yourself, is it true? And if I were to put you on the spot, Stephanie, and say, is that true? You'd be like, no, it's not.
Exactly. Exactly. I have lots of love in my life.
You have lots of love
And
in your life.
abundance. Yeah.
Right. And so that's the piece that I really wanted to talk about today, because we long for it. And yet when we pull it apart, so much of it is stories that we tell ourselves based on what society tells us it should look like, instead of really looking at, is it true? For me, I've been very blessed and have a lot of money in my life. And one of the things that I've been challenged with is incoming flow. So having a regular flow of income, I tend to, with my businesses, and even as I say it, I was about to say, I tend to not have flow. And even as I say that, it's not true, because I have several businesses that have flow coming in, and I have others where it's money goes out more than it comes in, where it's in the red, you know? And so I have a tendency, the stories that I tell myself are all around the money going out, of I'm not good enough, I haven't done enough, I haven't tried enough, I don't deserve, like all of the stories. And I forget to look at what we just said with Stephanie. I forget to look at what's the real truth, is that I've been really blessed with money. And yet that's where my longing is. Not for so much money, it's for a consistent flow that, like, I have generated this income, not just my investments or like the stuff. It's, I want to have a regular flow of income so that I can, to be honest, so that I can turn around and gift that to other people. So that it's not so that I can buy more stuff. I have plenty of stuff. It's, I really want to do good work with it. And so I get frustrated when it's not there. It's not quite there yet.
And what's interesting is, as our frustrations grow, there's another part that then gets, attached to it that says, we must be frauds. What are we doing talking about leadership? What are we doing talking about, hey, we got it all figured out, when we don't? And I think that's a real thing to be honest about, all of us. It's like, is there space from where, well, two things. Is there space for us to still look humility and go, okay, there are things that we are working with too, that we don't have it all figured out, that we are surrendering and we are asking for help and we are looking in, and there's areas that we have mastery in. And this is why we need each other in a community. I'm talking here, we can't necessarily do something all on our own. I mean, maybe you can, because I can talk about the high rational achiever and my radical self-sufficiency that I've created, which actually can be very much a block to intimacy, because I put off the vibe, I don't need anybody,
Yeah.
and we talked about that. And I know that's true with you too, Maren, in the way of, we have this high level of self-sufficiency, whether it's financially or emotionally or mentally. And yet that's also not true. That becomes a protection for our deepest wounds.
It's, I will 100% admit to that, of pushing people away, because I got it. I'll take care of it. I'm the go-to person. I'm not the person that asks for help. And it feels very vulnerable and very scary to ask for help. And one of the spiritual truths that is out there, truth with a capital T, is that we can't do it alone.
Yeah. Actually, we're not supposed to.
We're not supposed to. And
It's meant to
so
be a collaborative effect,
And so when I look at this quest that I'm on for this flow piece, and I keep getting blocked, and in the last few days, it's been really up for me. One of the things that I came to was that, and it was with Stephanie's help, was that I can't do it alone. I'm being asked by the universe, by life, by spirit, to step into community with it, to ask for help, because that's the piece that I'm really missing, that I don't have yet, and I would really want to embrace.
And we need to break the narrative that it's not okay to ask for help or include other people or be vulnerable or just to be transparent and share where your needs are, or even acknowledge that, hey, I don't even know what my needs are.
Mm.
I just know something's off and I don't even know what they are. And so to be willing to explore the unknown in ourselves, not just in the outer world, but in ourselves, it's like, I don't know if I like this part of myself, or I don't even know if I know this part of myself, and what would it take to be intimate with me? And that's a different journey. It's an inward journey.
I will say one of the blessings that I have is that I do the editing for some of the podcast. I do the transcript, and I make sure, it makes me crazy when transcripts get our names wrong and that kind of thing. So I listen to all of the episodes, and I do the transcripts. And right now I've been working on transcript number 97, which by the time this publishes, you all will have heard it. And so the practices that we give you, they're not things that are far from us. The episode 97, we talk about what is the question that your life is the answer to. And so as I sat with my frustration last night and into this morning, I asked myself, what is the question that I'm actually living to get this result that I'm experiencing right now? And it led to peeling so many layers and getting to that place of really understanding, not with my head, understanding with my heart.
So I want to hear that, because the question, did you come up with the question? Did you hear the question that you are living that's creating this result?
I drew it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't words articulated, it was a drawing. And that's one of the things I really encourage. It's interesting because I'm working with a woman right now who she's one of my clients, and she last week she said, oh, I didn't do my homework, quote unquote homework. It's really hard work. And I said, it's not something that you have to write out all the time. You may not be able to articulate it. What if you danced it?
Mm.
What if you drew it? What if she does qigong every morning. I said, what if you held it as you held a question as you did your qigong? And so to answer your question, no, I don't have like a well articulated sentence of this is the
Yeah.
question that I was living or that I am living. And my heart doesn't speak in full sentences most of the time.
And this is a great sharing to say that there's many different ways to be able to express it, to be able to be with it, that it's not about figuring it out and doing it a certain contrived way, but you'll have your own way. Each of you that are listening out there will have your own way of being with that.
I think that we use the term high rational achiever a lot. And when we use that term, I think of, in our society, we've been trained to achieve in a certain way, and that there's a path to success. And it tends to be a very outward path. And we've talked about masculine and feminine energies. The energy behind it is a masculine energy. It has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. I know I've really embodied it. I know, Stephanie, we've talked about this. You've said you've really embodied it.
Mm-hmm.
And we hold it as an ideal of like, that is where I want to get to, as if it's the top rung of the ladder. And spiritually, it's actually about halfway into our evolution. There's beyond high rational achiever. And so, what we're talking about at this point, when I talk about my heart doesn't speak in full sentences, and Stephanie just, gave you some like, let's try it different ways. One of the things that you may be experiencing as our listeners out there is there's a part of you that wants to do it differently. It's like, that's not really working for me, what the universe, what the world currently is doing and telling me is the way to success, whatever that success looks like for you. Like we talked about for Stephanie and for me, it looks very different right now. What could you embrace that would open that door even more for you? That door being the beyond high rational achiever, the beyond what society says, here's what you do, here's the definition of success and how you get there. What is your heart calling you to?
And why? Why is it important to you? Like, I know I asked that because somebody asked that to me the other day. They said, Stephanie, I know you really want a life partner. You want to be married and you want to have someone in your life, as not just as a partner, but as your lover and as, your best friend. But why? Like, aren't you enough on your own? Like, you got freedom. Someone had actually asked that. And I said, that's such a great question. And because sometimes I can get caught up in that achieving mode of that, head down, keep going and just make it happen, that I can easily forget my reason why. And it just becomes competitive and willful and struggling and striving and that kind of thing. And it was a great moment to then say, yeah, why do I want that? And it was a wonderful reflection because it gave me a moment to say, actually, yeah, my life is really beautiful. There's so many wonderful things I'm grateful for. And so it automatically let me be saturated with gratitude and remembrance of what is beautiful and what is good. And then I said, from that deeper place of why, I want to be able to celebrate it and share it with someone. And I also know, and this is also true, that having someone I really want to be able to spar with, like, and what I mean is like, when somebody wants intimacy, and I'm not just talking about sex here, I'm talking about intimacy, to really know and love myself and to really know and love another. There's also going to be conflict. And most of us, especially when I'm talking about myself here in the way of a self-sufficiency, it's that I don't need conflict. I'm done with it. And yet conflict is one of the most beautiful doorways for self-discovery. And so instead of running away and hiding and doing everything in my life to avoid conflict, what if I could find love within myself enough that I could stand in it? And I feel like I am learning finally, after decades, I'm finally learning to be safe and at ease with conflict. That I'm telling myself this is an opportunity for more intimacy. And not from it, I'm not talking people of the trauma stuff. I'm not talking about that, like, crazy hot mess stuff. I'm talking about when you have a disagreement or you're irritated or someone's hurt your feelings and you have the willingness of self-love within yourself to stand up and say, that really hurt. Can we talk about that? And not run away or not make it about somebody else or justify it or be defensive. I'm learning that conflict is absolutely an act of love.
It can be. How it's done, I think, makes a big difference. And when it comes from a place of love, and both people have that ability to stay in their own hearts, then when one person gets a little squirrely, it's not the end of things. It is the beginning of something new, of a new layer.
Yeah, because I think, my self-sufficiency, my radical self-sufficiency has basically told myself it's not safe it's not safe to be in a relationship. Therefore, if someone is, upset with me or has a conflict, I'm at risk of being abandoned. So if I
Mm.
create a whole self-sufficiency story, then that's okay if they leave. That's okay if they abandon me. It doesn't really affect me. But that's so not true. That's so not true. And what if that conflict could then be, we're going to go deeper. There's going to be more
Mm.
intimacy. There's going to be more love. I'm going to discover something about myself and something about them that is going, and to know something is actually to love it. The more you know something and understand something, you cannot help but fall in love with it. And so when we say, I'm not in love with whatever, it's because you don't know it. You haven't leaned in to go into it to discover a new level. So that's a good reminder.
And to give you all kind of the understanding of when we started, we said Stephanie and I are going through the same thing from different perspectives. One of the things that I have in my life is I have that partner, and the kind of the proof is in the pudding type of thing. So as I've been going through my own dark night with my flow state, which I'll talk about in a moment, my husband, I took his head off. I just was blah. And one of the things I know about myself is I can be mean. I can be vicious. I really know how to do that. And so I've learned to stop myself and say to him, I need some time, go away and process and come back. And in this particular instance, which happened to be last night, I didn't do that. I took his head off. And bless his heart, he did. He came back to me and he said, when you say that, that really hurts. And I knew it. It's like I was not in my compassionate space and I just lashed out in my vulnerable place at him. So it was vulnerable to him. And what you were just saying of it gave us a place, an opportunity when I was able to, I did finally go away and got to my like, oh, aha, and was able to come back and talk to him. And we were able to talk about it. And it gave us a deeper intimacy.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And I think also what is mirrored to me in that situation too is that it's safe. When you're that self-sufficiency, if you've created a self-sufficiency belief system, like, oh, I don't need anybody, I've got this all handled, everything, there's also a need to be perfect. So not exploding, you have to like maintain that center.
Mm.
That takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of life force. And so to also say, to let down the self-sufficiency of like, guess what, I'm not perfect, I do need help. Then all of a sudden you don't have to be a perfectionist, and you don't expect other people to be a perfectionist. So what I'm saying is that there's space to make mistakes. I've seen these memes before that said, um, saying you're sorry, means you'll never do it again. It's like, oh
Oof.
my gosh, oh my gosh, oh ouch, good
Yeah.
luck. It's because we're going to talk about this, because this is a practice, right? Like, you're going to make all kinds of mistakes, and God love you, you'll probably make the same mistake. I think it said 18 times. You know that human beings make the same mistake 18 times before they make a change.
Mm.
In wildlife, I think it's only twice that they're able to make a mistake and then they're dead. So it's like they're faster learners than we are.
They are. And I would say 18 is conservative because
I do too.
that's only if you're consciously working towards changing that.
Right. Right.
Catching when it's an issue, right?
So I think, we need to be a lot more compassionate with ourselves when we make mistakes, and remind yourself that you're learning, and that it might look like you're making the same mistake, but it isn't. You're different each time you're making it if you're being aware of it. and you're tweaking it and you're tweaking it. It's like, cooking something without a recipe, and you're trying to make up the recipe and you're like, do I add more salt? Do I add less salt? You have to you're doing a little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit differently each time until you get it just right. And that doesn't just happen once or twice or three times.
Mm-mm.
It takes many, many, many iterations. So we need to, and as we start to be gentler with ourselves around making mistakes and forgiveness around making mistakes, then we have a lot more space for someone else too.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things as we're talking today, looking at it from my perspective, from what's been going on for me, which is my perspective, right? So my frustration, we've talked a little bit about what's been going on with me at the studio, and my landlord has decided that so what, in case you haven't listened to prior episodes, I had to close my business due to COVID, and I still had a year and a half left on my rent, on my lease. And I've been going back and forth with my landlord, and they keep saying, basically, you have to finish off your lease and not giving any leeway whatsoever. And I kind of played my last card, and they said, nope, that's it. You have to keep paying. And so there are still some options that are in the wind. And I got to a place, and we've talked about this before, where I shut down, where all my options seem to have gone away. And I started telling myself all kinds of stories that I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I didn't do it well. I started to really hate the studio. I hated, like, and this is what all came out as basically verbal diarrhea all over my husband. Bless his heart. And one of the things that, in his wisdom, he came back to me and said, is he owns an archery range. And he said, pretend that this was my last year owning the archery range from his perspective. He said, and I was closing up at the end of the year, just pretend like, and if I said to you at the end of the year when I closed up, well, that meant nothing, because it didn't make a ton of money, and because it just lasted so long, and because it's whatever, all the reasons, right? And he said, how would you respond to me? I said, well, I would hope that you would see that you really impacted a lot of people over the years that you ran the archery range. And he just looked at me with a smirk, like, don't you think that you did that at the studio? Didn't you impact hundreds and possibly thousands of lives? And he pointed at some. And because I was telling myself stories about my failure and because I'm on the hook for another, $60,000, and I just keep paying out money, and I keep paying out money, and I keep paying, and there's no income left from the studio. We shut it down, right? And that's what I mean by, like, where's the flow? And I was so narrow focused on the flow has to come from the same place that is going out of. And
That's your belief.
right, that's what I
That's
mean,
your
like
belief.
the
Yeah.
stories that I'm telling
Yeah.
myself. And so it put me into a downward spiral. And that's where this podcast comes from, is that it doesn't have to be a downward spiral. Or maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe that's spirit calling to me, of giving me an opportunity. And it took me a very, very long night and a very, very long day to get to the point of being able to see the opportunities. And the whole time we've talked about the itty bitty shitty committee, like speaking in my ear of, like, you're not good enough, and you're this and you're that, and what you mentioned earlier of, you're a fraud, and you're going to help people with their businesses. What are you thinking? And I have helped people with their businesses. So going back to Byron Katie's work of, is it true? Taking each of those things and saying, is it true? No, it's not. Is it true? No, it's not. And then
And
looking
that's the key, is to challenge it.
to challenge it.
Slow down enough to listen and inquiry, to go inside and go, okay, if I don't know what it is, just to be, not to try to figure, but just to be, because it'll come up, it'll surface, and then to challenge it. And I hear what you're saying too, and I'm like thinking of there's 3 things that I work with. And what we're talking about right now are the beliefs. This is number 1, is the belief. So one, you need to have a belief that what it is that you're seeking, you can 100% claim and own and be with it.
And I want to add to that the stories that you tell yourself when you challenge them. So the story that I started this whole little sharing with was that all my options were gone. And that's not true. And so when I have that belief, I will act from that belief and go directly into poor me, I'm not good enough, and all of that stuff. So stopping and challenging, seeing what those beliefs are.
So what I'm hearing you saying too, so take a belief that you want. So something that you want to believe in, something you want to be living, that's your ideal. And then look at all the beliefs that are opposing that. It's like house cleaning. You have to go in and go, okay, what are all the beliefs that are opposing my ideal of what I say I really, really want? There's another way of saying actually is what you're committed to. It's like if it's not showing up. So I can be honestly saying, if the partner, the right life partner isn't showing up, well, there's some part of me that's committed to him not showing up.
Right. And when
And
my
so,
flow is
right.
not showing up, there's some part of me that is committed to not being in flow because I get a certain amount of, addiction. It's truly an addiction to not being in flow. So because I get something out of it. There's always something that I get out of it.
And
so
that's the key to go and looking at. It's like when you can discover, what am I getting out of this? Because I guarantee you are getting something out of it.
whether it's
All I am saying,
attention, right?
yep.
You get attention, you get a little adrenaline kick, you get a whatever that is, right?
That's right. That's right. It's like something, it's serving me some way.
Mhm.
And that, boy, that takes muscle. That takes a willingness to actually be still and be with it
Mhm.
and be uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable.
Having
But
just
we can't just leap there and have it without, it's like, somebody who wins a lotto, they win, the big lotto, and they were broke up until then or whatever. And we know that so many times people, once they've won something, they often lose it
right.
and end up in the exact same place that they were before they won the lotto. And why is that? It's because they don't have the internal structures, the support system inside themselves to actually maintain it or to work with it. And that's the belief system. That's where you have, your beliefs. If you haven't house cleaned internally in your mind or in your heart and your soul, it's going to limit what it's going to look like in the outer.
I also think it's the next two things that you were going to mention.
And yes, and then there's the next. So there are 3 things. So the first thing, of course, is the belief. The second thing is community, coming into union. And so Maren and I were just saying, thank goodness, I'll tell you, the 2 of us, we've had pretty rough 6 months, really, and in the outer world. And I honestly can say I don't know what I would have done with 2 things. 1, community to keep me sane and to keep me kind of upright, really, and to check on me and for me to ask for help and for them to be there. Like, I'm so grateful. And the other thing, which would be the practices, which is the third thing. So let's talk about community. So community of, and it's just, some of you might be thinking, well, I don't have a lot of people around me, or I can't rely on the people that are around me. Well, I would challenge that and say, well, why have you surrounded yourself with people like that? There's lots of people out there. Like you need to find new people, and new people do not need to be in your physical location. You could, I mean, goodness, you can look what Maren's in Chicago. I'm in Nova Scotia. Canada. We're in 2 different countries, you know, and yet we connect daily.
Yeah.
So that we have so many devices now to connect daily.
I know I have a spiritual coach that lives in Colorado, and um, several masterminds that I'm a part of, that people are uh, all over this country and actually in other countries. And it is, I mean, like in today's day and age, we have so many options of finding community that is going to serve us in where we want to go, that's going to help us stay
Exactly.
accountable.
And it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money, if any. There's incredible amount of communities that are out there that are literally free that you can join. There's just, I mean, 12-step programs to church or spiritual organizations to friends that you might not have reached out to for years. I mean, there's so many options if we get creative.
And I want to, many people don't know that you and I were acquaintances for 20 plus years. And our lives kind of wove back and forth. We would see each other occasionally. And then during the pandemic, it was like we were old friends that reached out to each other, and it clicked, and it was right time, right place. And it was like, oh, ooh, who are you? Right. And then we started the podcast, and this is the result. So when we're saying that you can find new community, or even a single person that can support you on where you want to go and who you want to become, we're doing it from a place of, we've just been there, we've just done that.
hmm hmm And so now that's in the outer world. Then you can also have your inner community too. We've talked about this before in the past of like, you you may have which we both have been talking about now, is the inner critic community, which really isn't very helpful. So, restock your inner boardroom. Like the inner voices inside, the inner imaginary beings that you can put inside, the loving parent to the great leader to the goddess or the god within you, or a superhero within you, like whatever it is. Be playful, be imaginative. This is the imaginal time. You can create an internal inner community. Start, like I said, stock your own inner boardroom. And who
Yeah,
would you have in there? And meet
that's a
with them
great
regularly.
question.
And that can actually be a practice.
So that's one of the things I know both Stephanie and I have done as a practice of, who are 3 people in the world, living, dead, cartoon characters, whatever, that would be exemplars for you. When we say an exemplar, somebody that you would want to live into some way of their that they live, that you would be like, I hold them as an ideal.
Yeah, they inspire you.
Mhm.
And perhaps they've even come through some difficult or challenges that you are going through right now, and they have already come through them. They've transcended them. Those are great exemplars.
Yeah, we love those. And when Stephanie says stack your inner boardroom, literally create a little space in your head, in your heart maybe, and let them live there, and go and ask them for advice. And you know so the third thing that Stephanie was going to get to, and she mentioned it already, is having a practice. And I'm going to go back to when she was talking about the people who win the lottery. They don't have a practice of knowing how to manage a lot of money in their lives.
Or
And there's
even
no
sometimes even a little
sometimes even a little,
a
right?
little of money, they don't have the practice. And so so many people say, "Oh, I don't want to win a lottery. Oh, it's too scary. I'll lose it all." And what they're really saying is, I don't have the skill set to manage
Right.
that much life force.
And there's no shame in that. It
Mm-mm.
literally is a practice that you develop over time. And that's why when you were saying earlier that it's about the beliefs, I think it's also about having the community around to support you. And this third thing, which is practice. So when we're looking at changing ourselves and really going after that longing that we started to talk about at the beginning of, like, there's that piece that is a little elusive. What are the practices that will allow you to step into that a little bit at a time? It's not going to be all at once, a little bit at a time. And I'll give you an example. After talking to my husband, I realized that one of the practices that I need to embrace is looking at the impact that I've had and how I define success. Because I, as much
So,
as
so I was just gonna ask a question there. It's like, so how would you practice that?
so as much as
Hmm.
I have said to everybody else, oh, I don't think it's a great thing that we define success by just by how much money we make. I realize that there's a belief system that runs my life that says you are worthy or not worthy based on how much money you make and if you have more income than outflow. And recently I was on a trip from Florida up to Canada, and I stopped at a gas station and there was a homeless man there. And he asked me for money, and I didn't have any cash on me. I just had my credit cards. But I had just bought a banana and some water. So I offered him the banana, and then I offered him the water, and I offered him the banana, and I offered him the water. And he's like, I have stomach problems. I don't want your banana. And I was like, would you like my water? And he's like, ah, get out of here. Right. So the reason I bring that up is oftentimes we have judgments around how much money people have. And as I was just talking about, like, my internal judgment. And I noticed that I didn't have a judgment about him. I was more than happy to give him what I had. I can buy more. And there is still a judgment in me around me, whether I have money coming in, more money coming in than I have going out. And so, what the practice for me would look like, getting to your question, what the practice for me would look like would be, what if I were that homeless man? What if I were a homeless woman?
So you're imagining this. I'm
I'm
taking it, right? This
imagining
is be the
this.
practice of imagining being a homeless man or woman,
Yeah.
and being empty,
Being
being able to
empty.
ask for help. They're very good at asking for help.
They are.
They
And the
can be our teachers.
vulnerability there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so much that I could learn there.
Mhm.
And so that's one aspect of the practice. The other aspect of the practice is a gratitude journal, which I've done many times in my life. And I personally will expand my gratitude journal, or maybe focus my gratitude journal in into what is it that I have created in the world that I'm actually grateful for. So that I start to learn for myself, not just learn, because it's not about my head. It's about retraining my head. It's about learning to listen to my heart instead of my head. And so my heart says, I've reached a lot of people, I've touched a lot of people, I've changed a lot of lives. My head says bullshit. So I need to retrain my head. And that means spending some time with it and changing those beliefs, replacing them with other beliefs, with evidence of the opposite. And that's a gratitude journal for me. And it may look different for everybody.
So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really helpful. I don't think we know so often how to do practice, and it's so great to hear how other people do practices because it can give you new ideas. I know for me, one of my practices, I can get into a real melancholy, like a poor me, and my body, it gets really soggy and floored, and I'm all about feeling emotion, because I think if we don't feel emotion, it does get stuck in our body, and it gets acted out in another way through pain or through reactivity or something. So I think there definitely needs to be a time and space. And so I've been watching the movie Shrinking, or the TV show Shrinking on Apple TV. And, the psychologist says to the grieving daughter, put on some sad music and cry to a song for 15 minutes a day and just do it. Even if you're not sad, just put the as a practice. And I'm like, that's a great practice. And so I've been doing that. I've said, okay, I'm going to put on some sad music, and I'm going to allow that melancholy, that sadness, that self-pity, the anger, whatever the emotion is, I'm going to give it its full voice, its full potential for 15 minutes. And then I'm done. And then I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be, and I'm going to practice being happy, not faking it, but it's like I've given a full voice to it. And I can do it again tomorrow. And I can do it again the next day, because that's what a practice is something that you do every single day.
Right. It's not a practice if you do it once.
Right. And so if I get going in my daytime and, I've already done my 15 minutes, boo-hoo, curse and swear and hit the dashboard and all that kind of stuff, I can say, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow for 15 minutes. Or I can do it right then again for 15 minutes. But I'm not going to do it for, an hour and 50 minutes. I'm not going to do it for 15 hours. I'm going to do it for 15 minutes. I'm going to give it full on expression. And I'm going to do it whether I think I need it or not, because that's the practice.
And that's how, we all know this from going and working out. That's how you build a muscle. And we don't oftentimes think of our spirituality or our businesses as building a muscle. And I know spirituality and businesses don't necessarily, you're like, what? Why did those two come out of her mouth? Because to me, that's where our evolution is going to happen, is when we bring spirituality into business. And it is building a muscle. It's changing from the way that we have been taught to do things into a new way of doing things. And that's exactly what I am practicing in my world. It's what Stephanie is practicing in her world. And it is it's an internal job. I know you guys have heard us say this a bazillion times, right? It's not about what's out there. It's about what's going on in here, which means I have to bring awareness to us. That's a practice in and of itself. Even if you did nothing to quote unquote change it, becoming aware of it actually starts the change.
Mm-hmm.
So just saying to yourself, you know what? I want to become aware of every time I get that adrenaline hit from embracing some story that isn't a story that I want anymore.
Right.
Because like we said, there's some part of you that gets something out of it. And it's usually some sort of an adrenaline hit of attention or, something that's going on inside of you.
So take that practice and let us know. Because, one of the things is, if you don't have a practice, or you don't know how to make something into a practice, or you're, the three things, the belief, you need to have a belief of what is it that is so big and so compelling that you be willing to let go of your old identity for your old way of being. So have a belief. The second thing is the community. What are you wanting to come into union with? Who are the people in your neighborhood? Stack your inner boardroom. And the third thing is a practice. And if you don't have a practice, or you're looking for a practice, please reach out to us on one of our many platforms.
Yes.
Through the Soulful Leaders, right?
Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, the Soulful Leaders.
There we go. Please reach out to us, or reach us on our website, the soulfulleaderpodcast.com, and send us an email. Send us a request. We'd be happy to help you out.
We will look forward to seeing you and hearing your feedback on one of our channels, or right here at the Soulful Leader Podcast next week.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader Podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.